Welcome to Learn English, the podcast where we help you improve your English one conversation at a time. I'm Sam, your host, and today we have a special guest, Angel, joining us. Hi, Angel. How are you?
Hi, Sam. I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We're so glad to have you. Today's topic is something a lot of our listeners can relate to: making travel plans in English. Whether you're planning a vacation, booking flights, or just dreaming about your next destination, we're going to walk through some key phrases and vocabulary to help you talk about travel with confidence.
That sounds amazing. Traveling is such a common topic, and knowing how to discuss it in English is really important, especially if you're visiting a new country or speaking with friends from around the world.
Exactly, and by the end of today's episode, you'll feel ready to plan your next trip and chat about travel like a pro. So let's get into it. Angel, do you have any travel plans coming up?
Actually, I do. I'm planning a trip to Spain next month. I've always wanted to explore Barcelona and Madrid.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Spain is such a beautiful country. So let's imagine you're talking to a travel agent or a friend about your trip. What's the first thing you'd need to do?
Probably book my flights and accommodation, right?
Exactly. When booking flights or accommodation, you might say things like, "I'd like to book a flight to Spain," or "I'm looking for a hotel in Barcelona." Simple phrases like these can help you start the conversation. And don't forget about important vocabulary like destination, departure, and accommodation.
That's true. I've heard people use those words, but it's good to practice them in sentences.
Absolutely. And when you're ready to explore, you'll want to ask about famous landmarks. Like, what are the must-see landmarks in Madrid? Or, where's the best place to visit in Barcelona? It's all about being clear and confident in what you're asking for.
That makes a lot of sense. I'll definitely be asking for tips on where to go and what to see.
Exactly. And speaking of tips, you can also ask for recommendations. For example, can you recommend a good restaurant? Or, what's your favorite place to visit? These are great conversation starters with locals.
I love that. It makes it easier to connect with people when you travel.
Yes, and the more you practice, the more natural it will feel. So listeners, don't be afraid to try these phrases when planning your next trip. Practice them with friends or even in front of the mirror.
Definitely. The more you use them, the more confident you'll be.
And that's the goal. We want you to feel confident using English in real-world situations, especially when traveling. All right, Angel, before we wrap up, do you have any last-minute travel tips for our listeners?
Yes. I'd say always keep an open mind when you travel and don't be afraid to ask questions in English, even if you make mistakes. It's all part of the learning process.
Great advice. Asking questions and making mistakes is how we all learn. Well, that's all for today's episode on making travel plans in English. Thank you so much for joining us, Angel.
Thank you for having me, Sam. This was a lot of fun.
Glad to hear that. And to our listeners, we hope this episode helps you feel more confident the next time you talk about travel in English. Don't forget to subscribe to Learn English for more tips and conversations. Until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and safe travels.